It was quite a spectacle in the Rose Garden yesterday. President Trump spent at least 45 minutes or an hour speaking, some scripted, some not scripted. There was a bit of a MAGA rally sort of a vibe about the whole thing. There was a group of 20 or so U.S. steelmakers, automakers who were there, and it was it was a bit of a almost his full cabinet was there. Vice President Vance was there, and as he spoke, the world came to grips with the fact that this wasn't just going to be a flat rate across the board. It was going to be many different tariff rate numbers depending on which country we're talking about. China got hit with 50. China now faces China's imports into the U.S. face a 54% tariff, whereas 2 months ago, that number was zero. So we have gone from kind of 0 to 60 kilometers an hour, in terms of the effect on the global economy. So, yeah, it was interesting to watch the market reaction as Trump spoke. All the market knew was the 10% baseline rate, and then eventually, once it absorbed all the other numbers, the much higher numbers, stocks turned down. So the sentiment really kind of whipsawed there in the aftermath of it.
We heard from the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He spoke to Bloomberg shortly after the announcement, warning against retaliation. But already we're seeing other countries ramping up their response to this as well. Talk us through some of the responses we've heard.
Yeah, so far we've heard. So one of the few areas to avoid a big hit was Canada and Mexico. Canada, they already have they're under another sort of tariff regime, so they did not get hit with these reciprocal tariffs, and so you would think that there would be room for negotiation there. And Doug Ford, a Canadian politician, said he would urge the Prime Minister not to retaliate. So maybe there's some room for negotiation there. We heard a similar kind of tone from Japan, who said this was regrettable, but we look forward to sitting down with the Trump administration and working through this. The European Union, as you mentioned, was out very early this morning saying we have a big response if talks fail. So they are leaving the door open. Never has there been a better telegraphed beginning of a trade war than April 2nd, 2025. So the EU could have come back immediately with a package of retaliation. But they came in this morning and they said, we'll give talks a chance. So those are the three between Asia, North America, and Europe. There seems to be a tone of, okay, let's sit down. This is the worst case scenario, but let's try to talk through it.
Yeah, and we're getting fresh lines from Japan, from Ishiba, saying that Japan won't hesitate to talk directly with Trump if necessary, deeply concerned over the consistency of US tariffs with the WTO. The World Trade Organization will strongly urge the US to review tariff measures. President Trump is following through, though, as you say, long telegraphed, long promised campaign to reshape global trade. So a question domestically in the US, will it help the US in the long run?
Well, yeah. Well, what matters in politics is not the long run, in the short run. So when you look at the countries that got hit, you're talking about the hardest. You're talking about Vietnam, Malaysia, places where Apple, an iconic American company, has shifted its production. So everyone who wants to buy an Apple iPhone going forward is going to pay whatever that tariff rate now is on Vietnam. It's in that high 40%. I think it's very high. So during the first trade war, a lot of Chinese companies moved to these places in South Asia to avoid the tariffs, and now the second Trump administration is catching up with them, and and try to sort of block that end run around tariffs that they were trying to do. So you got to wonder what the effect is going to be in the short term on the economy, and on as we heard some previous guests say, this doesn't clear up the uncertainty cloud that's been hanging over markets and companies for the past couple of months. In some cases, it makes it even worse.